आर्मीनिया और अजरबैजान के बीच नागोर्नो काराबाख इलाके को लेकर बीते 20 दिनों से ज्यादा वक्त से संघर्ष चल रहा है। युद्ध की स्थिति बनी हुई है। हजारों टन गोला बारूद फूंका जा चुका है और सैकड़ों जानो माल का नुकसान हो चुका है। संघर्ष विराम की कोशिशें बीते 20 दिनों के दौरान कई बार की गई। कई देशों ने मध्यस्थता का भी प्रयास किया, लेकिन यह संघर्ष विराम रह रहकर टूट जा रहा है। इस मामले पर और ताजा सूरत हाल पर बातचीत करने के लिए हमारे साथ अजरबैजान के फर्स्ट वाइस प्रेसिडेंट के स्पेशल एडवाइजर एम्बेसडर एलिचिन अमेरबायोव हैं। सो वेलकम टू एबीपी न्यूज सर। एंड फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, we are all, as the global community is concerned about the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Can you please share with us the latest situation as far as the ceasefire is concerned, and why the ceasefire is not getting the required stability in the region?
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for having me, because I think it's I should thank you for providing me with an opportunity to provide Azerbaijani perspective on the conflict for the broad Indian audience, and I think that the people of India deserves to know both sides of the story. But before we go to the ceasefire, if you give me just 20-30 seconds, I will just give you the context, because it's important to understand why we reached today's flare-up of tension. Because since 1993, this conflict has been frozen in a way, because since 1993, almost 20% of Azerbaijan's internationally recognized territory, including Nagorno-Karabakh region, but also 7 districts around it, have been under the control of armed forces of the Republic of Armenia. And all the population of Azerbaijani population, has been subjected to ethnic cleansing, and they have left, or they were evicted from those territories. So imagine that at that time, out of 8 million of population, 1 million we had either refugees or IDPs, because refugees are those 200,000 Azerbaijanis who were ousted from Republic of Armenia, and plus 800,000 from Nagorno-Karabakh and 7 adjacent regions. So that's why since 1993, this occupation started. In 1994, we had ceasefire, which was brokered by Russia between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And ever since, the so-called OSCE Minsk group has tried to mediate the conflict and to find a political solution. But unfortunately, during all these almost 30 years of mediation, we could not register any tangible progress, because the Armenian side, they had as their major goal to consolidate the status quo on the ground. So they didn't want to change anything that would impact their illegal control of Azerbaijani territories. Even the 4 resolutions of United Nations Security Council, which were adopted in 1993, all of them, they demanded complete, unconditional, and immediate withdrawal of occupying Armenian forces from Azerbaijani territories. But Armenia paid lip service to that. So basically, those documents are still there, and they are not implemented. And during all these years, the mediators, Russia, United States, and France, have put forward several proposals in order to address this problem, because everyone understood that the status quo is not sustainable. It's very fragile, and it's unacceptable, because it's a status quo created as a result of illegal foreign occupation and ethnic cleansing. That's why they put forward proposals, but they understand and they understood that it's not possible to settle this conflict with a package solution when all issues are resolved immediately. So they opted for a step-by-step approach.
Ambassador Amirbai, how do you respond to the recent situation? There are allegations that the conflict was initiated by the Azerbaijani forces. So what exactly prompted Azerbaijan to go for the military solution to this challenge?
Of course, Armenia has unleashed a vast campaign of disinformation. They are using every possible means to put the blame on Azerbaijan. But as I tried to explain to you, there was no reason for us to start it in July, because we are not looking at the Armenian territory as something that we would like to conquer. No, what we seek is to restore our territorial integrity and ensure the implementation of United Nations Security Council resolutions. And on 27th of September, again, they tried to provoke us for a retaliation, and they attacked us on 2 positions in the northern and southern part of the conflict zone. And this time they targeted specifically civilian population and civilian infrastructure. And when we had the first civilian victims, the decision was taken to retaliate because it is not acceptable and we cannot tolerate this any longer. That's why this spiraled and this became an all-out war. But everything what is happening now, sir, is happening in the sovereign territory of Azerbaijan. We have not trespassed the Armenian territory. And it is our legitimate right for self-defense, which is ensured by the Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. We appealed to the international community to stop this violence so that we can go back to substantial talks. But there were two truces, two attempts for humanitarian truce or humanitarian ceasefire. The first one was in Moscow on the 11th of October, and the second one was brokered by Paris by French President Macron, which started on 18th of October. Both times, 5 minutes after the entry into force of these truces, Armenian forces started to attack us because they wanted to take back the territories which they lost since 27th of September.
Are you referring to Ganja?
Ganja, because it was twice attacked, and as a result of this attack, because these are cowardly and treacherous attacks, because they did it at night time, 2 in the morning. Imagine it.
There have been allegations and counter allegations. Likewise, the similar allegations are being made from the Armenian side.
I'm telling you what we have experienced. Your ambassador of India and our military attaché, they all were invited to visit the place. You have seen the footage. It is not something that we invent. This is a crime of war because they have been targeting deliberately innocent, peaceful civilian population. I mean, again, there were some civilian casualties in the city of Hankandi, which they called Stenaparket. But we had also civilian casualties in Terter, Goranboy, Akjabadi, other cities which are in the zone of conflict. That is very regretful, but that could be understood because it's a collateral damage. Azerbaijan has never targeted civilian infrastructure, but they did. And they did it twice. And imagine 25 people died while sleeping because of the ballistic launched attacks.
When was the Indian ambassador and the military attaché was taken to, and which area you invited?
They were taken to all the places where we had these ballistic missiles, hitting the residential areas. And so basically there were 2 visits by diplomatic corps. Every ambassador and military attaché were invited. So many of them decided to come because it's one thing when officials are saying, it's another thing when you come and see. And they saw the grief of the people who were touched by this. They saw the children who were killed. They they saw how they were buried. They saw how small kids became orphans just in 1 second because there was this treacherous attack. So this should be condemned, sir. This should be condemned by all civilized population of the world because, I mean, this is a war of crime, this is unacceptable, and this is another attempt to intimidate Azerbaijani population, to extend the geography of the conflict, and this is not the way to seek peace. That's why Azerbaijani government made sure that all international organizations, all our partners, all friendly countries are informed about these realities. And I am thankful to you that you provide me with this opportunity to reach out to friendly Indian people, and they should know also Azerbaijani story because the narrative of Armenia, unfortunately, is based on artificial parallels and disinformation. And let me mention one more thing is that they're not only targeting in these territories the civilian population, but they have destroyed almost all our cultural heritage, including the graveyards.
For the region of Stepanakert in Armenia. So, it's like a collateral damage on the either side when the conflict situation is there.
Stenaparket is not the name. It's not Stenaparket. It's called Hankandi. Because Hankandi is an ancient Azerbaijani name of this city, because Stenaparket, it was after the Soviet rule was established in Azerbaijan. And it's the name of one of the thugs, Bolsheviks, who killed Azerbaijani population. So basically, what you say may be true when we are talking about the line of contact and zone of contact. What I'm telling to you, they have been targeting cities far away from the zone of contact to intimidate. They even launched
that no shelling from the Azerbaijani force has hit the civilian area of Armenia. This is what you can claim?
No, I'm telling you that, in that city of Hankandi, there were some military objectives the artillery units, the multiple rocket launchers from which, our civilian population was attacked. So as someone who is waging war, it is, of course, our duty to neutralize those, military objectives. But when you do that, of course, there is a collateral damage because all those weapons, they are not that precise. And we regret the loss of human life in Khankendi, as well as we regret human loss of life everywhere.
The biggest concern in this conflict is the involvement of the third countries, like especially the concern of spillover is there as far as the global community is concerned. So how Azerbaijan, being the responsible member of the international community, is going to restrict the involvement of the third nation as far as the flaring up of the conflict is concerned? Because recently there have been allegations by the Armenian premier, Nikolai Pashinyan, who said that, the Syrian mercenaries or even the Pakistani nationals are fighting in the garb of the Azerbaijani force. How do you respond to these allegations?
Well, a short answer is that it's just fake news. And the longer answer, if you allow me just 1 minute, I should tell that Nikol Pashinyan, or Nikolai Pashinyan, actually, after what he did to the civilian peaceful population sleeping in Ganja, he has put his name in one row with his predecessors, Presidents Kocharian and Sarkisyan, who committed the genocide in Khojaly. So basically, this Ganja massacre will be always on his record. And he has, in our eyes, he's a war criminal because he deliberately wanted to kill as many people as possible. Now, with regard to the third parties, Azerbaijan from the very start wanted to make sure that the international community intervenes and stops it. But when the international community failed to do that, we understood that after all these provocations by Armenia, we have to respond to them in such an adequate manner so that they abandon the idea of military solution. But of course, I gave you an example how they wanted to involve third parties by attacking us as frontier, because Armenia and Russia are allies, and they thought that if we attack Armenian territory, they would appeal to ally and they would intervene. The allegations on participation of any third parties from our side, they have no proofs. These are misleading and foundless because we have asked everyone, provide us some evidence. If you are telling that some other countries are involved, or you say that there are some mercenaries, let me tell you, Azerbaijan today has a regular army of 100,000 people, and not to count the reservists. Armenian forces are about 30,000. Tell me, why do we need 200, 300 mercenaries from somewhere who don't speak our language, who don't know the local terrain, who cannot communicate with our military, and who are not motivated as we are? Because mercenaries, they have only one motivation, this is money. But our army is highly motivated because it's about clearing their motherland from the illegal foreign military presence. That's why I would take with a grain of salt all the allegations against Azerbaijan in this regard, because we have a highly trained, equipped military force which is doing, which is capable of accomplishing any military task which is given by the commander-in-chief. So there was a sense of frustration of Azerbaijan that we are left alone, that we are ignored, and moreover, they are humiliating. They were adding insult to injury by trying to organize ceremonies of inauguration of so-called self-styled leaders of this so-called republic in Shusha. Shusha was always Azerbaijani town in Nagorno-Karabakh, always part of our national pride and cultural identity. And when you try to put your parliament there, when you say that I will announce one day that the capital will be in Shusha, when you are dancing, drinking, and in the midst of pandemic, and doing this inauguration things, when you try to settle,
India has also appealed both sides to initiate the diplomatic solution to this problem and initiate the talks and resolve via peaceful deliberations. India is soon going to take over as the non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Do you see the role of India as a peacemaker in this entire process? Because the Indian government has already supported the OSCE Minsk group process for the conflict resolution.
Well, let me respond to you that, of course, we all seek the peaceful resolution. And we know that there is a format which was recognized by everyone, including the United Nations. And it was only yesterday that the United Nations Security Council has held deliberations around this ongoing conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And we know, of course, that India is a non-permanent member. And we very much hope that during your presidency, India will demonstrate, as always, its impartiality and its attachment to the primacy of international law. And of course, when we talk about international law, we are talking about, first of all, the resolutions that were adopted back in 1993, the resolutions which demand immediate, complete, and unconditional withdrawal of all foreign occupying forces from Azerbaijan. And of course, we do hope that by that time, because your presidency will be in 10 days' time, so I hope that even before that, we will be able to come up to some mutually acceptable, agreement to observe the humanitarian truce, because it's essential for the parties to be able to exchange corpses of the dead, POWs, the detained persons. So we actually proceeded from that understanding when we gave our okay to go to Moscow and then to agree to this French brokered truce. But unfortunately, 2, 3, 5 minutes after it enters into force, Armenia restarts because they want to regain back those lost territories. Pashinyan understands that when Armenian people will realize that he has lost the battle, it will be over. His power will be finished. So that's why he gives his okay, because he cannot refuse. But then, as a matter of fact, he orders his people, military, to target Azerbaijani civilian infrastructure. They also wanted to destroy our hydroelectric power station in the city of Mingachevir, which is 100 kilometers away, because they are hopeless and they are very vulnerable, and they are on a defeating march on the ground. So they want to recompensate that by rendering huge human losses to innocent civilian population. So this should be condemned. And I think one of the reasons why Armenia is doing all that is because of impunity. Impunity is the biggest inducement to continue to do wrong. Because when they are not condemned, they think that they can allow this permissiveness. And they have been doing it for years. That's why we hope that the United Nations Security Council will be able to stop Armenian government for prolonging this massacre, because we want to stop the armed phase of the confrontation. We want to talk, but we don't want imitation of talks, sir.
Thank you very much for sharing the time and thought and your perspective with ABP News. Thank you very much, Ambassador Alechner.
ABP News, आपको रखे आगे।